often are we monitoring what is being put as far as brochures go in our libraries? And are those being vetted before they're being put out, or is people just have a free reign to put out whatever they want?
They don't really have a free reign, but sometimes people will come in and just put things out.
Okay.
So we do try and clean those up, and we do try to offer an approval cycle. All of our policies, I will say, none of them sunset, but they do get a little stale. So we're reviewing all of those in a cycle. The display cycle, which includes that public material, is something that we're reviewing this year to put some sort of mechanism in place so that all of our staff know what is allowed to be put out in the public area.
Okay, because during election season, I was in the libraries in and out, and I saw people pushing agendas through brochures in the spot where people, I guess, you guys had it to where anybody could put brochures up, but I didn't know if there was any type of stipulation behind that. So maybe it's something we, obviously, as you said, need to look into to maybe tighten up a little bit, because I think that's important. I don't think we should be allowing organizations just to put their brochures in there. They're not paying for any type of marketing space or whatever that might be. And, I think there would be a lot of offensive going in regards to what's being put in those shelves. So
That is something that we want to review for, is accuracy and appropriateness in the public for information purposes.
great. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Ballard.
Okay. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about our collection development policy. So I was able to go through that, as well as some of the what we're publicly pushing out and encouraging people to read on the website. For example, we have a Black History section on the website, which is great. And so I start looking through the recommended books in the Black History section. And so I see the 1619 Project. I see a biography of Angela Davis, famous Marxist. But what I don't see is I don't see any books by Thomas Sowell, the famous conservative Black thinker. I don't see any books about Condoleezza Rice. I don't see any books about Colin Powell. And so the books that are being pushed in this collection seem to have a certain bent, which I think that we need to try harder to make sure that we're giving that kind of content neutral approach and exposing people in our community to all kinds of to all kinds of Black history and all kinds of ideas. So that was one thing that kind of struck me. So I also was looking at the content development policy, and so we have a wide range of viewpoints and interests, individuals' freedom to read, view, or listen to material without infringement from other patrons. I completely agree with that. The public library is different than the school library. We should have a very wide range of views. And I just want to ensure that we actually have a very wide range of views. We don't want to consider the race, nationality, religion, gender, sexual orientation, or political or societal views of the author. And I think that all of that is great. So then I started actually going into our digital library and just doing some keyword searches. And this isn't perfect, obviously, because you're going to pick up some things, not pick up others. So, for example, if I typed in the keyword homeschool, we have a large homeschooling community, I got 45 books, which seems pretty low. Because I think that those homeschooling books, study aids, I think could be hugely important for people. And I think that we could do a better job of making sure that we have those. So then I looked at Catholicism, 115 books, which, pretty low. Then I typed in LGBTQ, and then I narrowed it to children's books. And I got over 200 books, 241 labeled as transgender kids books. And then I actually went in and started looking at some of the books. You know, what are these books? Are these actually kids books? Yes, they are. About 5% of the population is LGBTQ. So it seems like we have a really kind of outsized focus on these books. Some of these books are actually even for preschoolers. You wouldn't know from the surface of looking at these books. A parent wouldn't necessarily even know that that this is an LGBTQ book. There was one that was just called Calvin, for example. Cute little book. It was just a little kid on the front with big hair, and it just said Calvin. And it was something that I wouldn't have hesitated to rent for my child because it's just a cute little storybook. And then I go in and look at the description, and it's about a transgender child, and it's a subject that would create a conversation that I'm certainly not ready to have with my 5-year-old or my 3-year-old. So I think that we need to do a better job of making sure that we know that these books exist, making sure that parents have that awareness. I know that we do have the policy that says that parents have to sign off on certain things, but I think that needs to be expanded. I think it needs to be more robust. And I will also add that I found one book that came from a so-called gender critical perspective. And you know, there's a pretty big body of literature and you know, intellectuals who are coming at the transgender issue from a different perspective, and I'm not seeing that represented in our collection. So the one book that I was able to find was Irreversible Damage by Abigail Schreier, which talks about rapid onset gender dysphoria in young girls. And I appreciate that that's there, but I do think that we need to have more. Just another example, books on veganism. We have 281 titles. I went through them. Many, all of them are how to become a vegan cooking, all of those things. Maybe 5% of the population is vegan. Whereas on, you know, survival skills, something that everybody could utilize, far fewer. If you look at Karl Marx, 50 books on or about Marx. But then if you look at some of the great libertarian thinkers or the Austrian school economists, zilch, nothing at all. So we have nothing by Robert Nozick. We have nothing by von Mises. We have 3 books by von Hayek.
What about Ayn Rand? Certainly.
I'm sure we have Ayn Rand.
Okay.
I didn't look for her specifically. So I do. People don't necessarily realize that they have a bent when they're picking these things out. And as someone who is a voracious reader myself, I have things that are in my collection at home that I consider essential or very important that the community doesn't have access to. And these are not things that are, these aren't topics that are fringe. These aren't topics that are way, you know, out in the weeds. So I just want to make sure that we're truly giving this broad spectrum for people. So my suggestion is that we establish a citizen collection development work group, pulling people from all over the community, all viewpoints, so that, and I want intelligent, educated people who have very diverse viewpoints, who can lead us to make sure that we are having a truly diverse choices. I also would like to see the expanded policy on child rentals of adult materials and materials involving sexuality and gender. Those are my big things. So thank you.
Well, thank you, ma'am. We've certainly moved on from user fees, haven't we?
Yeah, yes, we have.
Okay. Commissioner Ron and then Commissioner Baugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Ballard, for bringing all that forward. That was really good. I got just a couple questions. One, on your vendor list, Baker Taylor, it seems to be who we order the majority of our books from.
Yes.
Are we making sure we're getting competitive pricing with them in comparison to other book distributors? I know in the past, they have somewhat of a dicey history in the past of overcharging back in 2013. And I just want to make sure that, we're getting the best competitive pricing from them that there is in comparison to who other the vendors are that are out there that can supply books to us.
No, that's a very good question. There's another company named Brodart that we did talk to about the opening day collection, which was that one-time push for the Lakewood Ranch materials. But Brodart came in at more cost per item than Baker and Taylor. And Baker and Taylor also provides pre-processing. They put the RFID tags in, and they put the Mylar covers on. They put a lot of that handwork into it, so they're ready to go on the shelf when they come in. So I do feel comfortable that Baker and Taylor is a valid vendor for us and the best use of our funds, because I don't want to spend more money on a book either. But we do talk to other vendors to make
Okay,
sure
thank
we
you.
are.
Recently, we've had some issues with displays within the library system. And I know Administrator Washington jumped right on that, and we appreciate that. Is there a committee or within the librarian system, whatever, that regulates what goes into our displays in our libraries so we don't have offensive or those type of things going in where people are walking to our libraries, children, those type of things are going to see these type of offensive displays?
Thank you. That's a very good question. As far as displays go, I would say that 99% of our displays are not panel displays, which is what we were talking about, or three-dimensional objects. They're usually books. They're just book displays. And internally, so everyone that operates at a system level reports to me. All the branches report to Lynn, and we do review what they're planning on putting up. We just review the subject, not item by item, because that would be a bottleneck in operations. And all of our branch managers, again, have advanced degrees so that they're able to evaluate those materials. Now, as Commissioner Ballard pointed out, nothing is perfect. So we need to continue to review that, and that is something that Lynn and I are continuing to strengthen.
Thank you. A couple more questions real quick. On the fact of what can be seen by young children and things like that walking through the library, are we sectioning off the areas where we consider things to be explicit and those children do not have access to those areas? Be it, do we have like a certain area where you're going to be 18 years or older to get into, or are we doing things to protect the children from seeing explicit books or anything that's on the shelves?
We really don't carry those kind of books.
Okay.
We don't carry those, but we do shelve everything in the adult area for books that are intended for adults, books that are intended for teens. Even in the juvenile area, if we feel that it is something that should be in the parenting collection as opposed to on the open shelves, we'll put it there. And if there's ever a doubt, like in T-ball, you can play up. So we'll put a teen material that might be on the edge of being adult, we'll put it in adult.
Okay, thank you. One last question. Have we considered using, to drive traffic to libraries, of considering using them as like some type of business hub to where someone could come in and come in with their laptop, create digital media, create print, do things like that, and pay us a fee to do that? To where a business guy could come in or lady could swing into the library, get on their laptop, hey, I got to print a report real quick. They don't have access to an office or something of that nature. Have we thought about doing that, or are we doing that right now?
That is something that Mr. Washington and I have talked about in the past. Within our current footprint, we'd have to do some remodeling. There are some spaces, our maker spaces, particularly at the downtown area. It might not suit all those needs, but it depends on what your business is.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I think I'm next.
Thank
No,
you.
he just stepped out. He'll be back. So I want to make sure that I've got a full understanding of everything that I've heard and how these decisions are made as far as what books we have in our library. Who makes those decisions? Who buys the books? Who picks them out?
No, that's a great question. So right now, myself and Lynn are buying the books for the Lakewood Ranch collection.
Oh, great.
And We have a youth services department. There's 2 librarians there, and they consult on the youth materials. But then we have a collection development librarian who is not, she has other duties, but all of the material purchasing goes through her.
Okay. In my almost 11 years on this board, I don't recall us ever having a workshop to talk about the libraries and the materials that we have in them and so forth. So I'm glad that we are doing it now because I think we need to. I mean, I've done some research and, I'm not sure about the Library Bill of Rights. Okay, the way I look at it, maybe I'm incorrect, so you'll have to help me here. But I look at it from the standpoint that the libraries come under Manatee County government.
Yes.
We pay for them, the taxpayers, their money buys the books. And I will be honest with you, I got a lot of emails and a lot of phone calls about some of the displays. I think we all did, actually. Well, except for the new ones. I don't think they were on the board at the time. Because there was a display basically right when you walked in the door at one of our libraries that was really not appropriate. So I do know the administrator at the time went down there and got rid of it. So please explain to me in something like that, a display that's right there where you walk in the door, who sets up that display?
Add something to that,
Sure.
Commissioner Paul. And I think that we're all alluding to this certain display, and
I'm just going to
I
nail it.
I don't want anybody to think that it's it's because it's an LGBTQ display.
No, it's not.
It was overtly political. Is my issue with it. So this is a huge display in the front of the library when people are coming in to vote at the library and giving all of this history and then saying, this president, reduced these rights. This president put these rights forward.
Exactly.
Almost conditioning voters to think about those issues right as they're going to vote. So that kind of overtly political display, especially on the weeks of early voting when people are coming into the library to make those big decisions, I think is why there was such an outsized response.
And not to mention, I'm going to carry that what she said is exactly accurate, but I'm going to carry it one step further. I don't think that was necessarily a display that should have been right where you walk in the door of the library. I think we need to understand that is to some people, it is a touchy situation. People don't want to see that the minute they walk in the door. So I am concerned on who are making these decisions. Why are we having these types of decisions made in our libraries? Because I'm going to be honest with you. I had people trying to make appointments with me to complain and wanting to come in and do something about our libraries and the way that this material was being handled. Mm-hmm. And I said, no. I said, I will not meet with you until the board has a workshop so that the board can discuss it and we can figure out where we are. Then I will sit down with you and have that discussion. I think it's too lax. I don't like a lot of what I've heard. And I'm not trying to put blame on any particular person. I'm just saying that I don't think that we have necessarily have it set up for appropriateness, perhaps the way we should. Mm-hmm. Some things are just not meant to be out in front of people when they walk into a library. I think anything sexual doesn't even need to be in the library, to be honest with you. That's a social issue. That is not something that, I look to my library to educate me on. You want to know something about that? You get on the internet, you do your homework. I don't think the majority of the taxpayers probably does not appreciate their money's being spent this way. So I'm just going to put it out there. I know we've kind of been all beating around the bush to some extent, but I'm not saying it's necessarily bad to have some of the things that are in the library. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that I don't think that we've perhaps displayed it appropriately and in the right place, for the public as a whole. And I think we need to be a little bit more on top of that. And there is no secret. I mean, obviously, Moms for Liberty and so forth, with them going into the schools, has brought a lot of this to the forefront. Perhaps it needed to be brought to the forefront because the word decency comes to mind. We've got to be more in tune with the public as a whole. And I say as a whole, but that means everybody, not just one particular group or two particular. It's everybody. As far as the books, that some of them that Commissioner Ballard brought up, shame on us. It sounds like to me we're promoting communism and so forth more so than a democracy, than a free country, a free state. I think we need to look at that. So I don't know that I think a citizens committee is good, but I think this board needs to set some guidelines about what we want to see and how we want to see it. This is not working. With what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing, it's not working. So we've got to set up some guidelines. What the board would want to do on that, I have no idea. I'm only one commissioner, but if you're buying books right now to go in Lakewood Branch, you're getting in my area, that's a problem. I've got to go into Braden River, obviously, more than I have, because I've not noticed anything like that. But you can rest assured I'm going to be going. So I don't know what the answer is. That's why I wanted to know who is really in charge of our libraries. Is it another group, or is it Manatee County government? Because this is a very conservative county. We are pretty much a conservative state. So I think we just need better guidelines, more appropriateness in picking out books and so forth. And if we should be pushing anything, I think, in our libraries, it should be the Constitution. It should be the freedom that we have in this country, the form of government that we have in this country, especially here in our state. So, I am very concerned with what I've heard so far, because I knew Commissioner Ballard was doing her homework. I could tell, and she's been writing all morning notes. So I knew it was going to be good, because I know her thing. But some of it, I was really shocked to hear. So I don't know where we go from here, but I think this board, we need to have another workshop to really set some guidelines on how to move things forward. I think we do need a citizens committee to look at this. I'll even go this far. Over the weekend, I didn't really go on social media. I don't go on social media much anymore, but I will tell you, I did see one thing this weekend, and it was about, religion and government. Well, this government was based on God, and we seem to have lost that. And with what I'm hearing about in our libraries, we've really lost it. So we need to figure out, I think I already know where we are as a county. I know where we are as a board, and something needs to give. So that's all I'll say right now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Washington, would you like to address the concerns of the board at this point, and then we'll move on to Commissioner Beard and then Commissioner Satcher?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just briefly, I can't touch on all the concerns that board members have today. It may take me a little bit longer to formulate my words to be respectful for all that are in the audience today. I will say that, I would like to offer a tone of calm and assurance to the board that we don't have a problem in our libraries. There may be some miscommunication, misunderstanding, but the policies and procedures that the library system of Manatee County uses has been brought before this body over the years. And I do agree that workshops are needed so that we can really get into the weeds of some of the current policies, procedures that this board would like to see edited, revamped, updated. But when we talk about displays, we're talking about a display that happened last year. And I would like to look at that as a one-off. Me as an individual, as a taxpayer, may have seen it one way, But with respect to the board and being mindful of the time of year in which it was, where it was located, the decision was made to take it down. But to clarify why it was in the display case, that is just a display case where all displays are located in the Palmetto Library. If you go there now, you will see the one up for Black History Month. When we speak about the platforms that the library currently uses for digital books, it's a platform that's used. We do not regulate what that platform does, but when you look at it and you happen to see particular books at the forefront, it's no different than when you go to Audible. The bestsellers are promoted in a particular way. Can we look at another platform that the board would agree upon? My only concern with that is even if we did do that, what you search for and what that platform may have on hand, you still may find issue with. So truly what's going to have to come out of this work session is more of a work session, more of a true direction of what this board would like to see and what safeguards reasonably that could be put into place, setting the right expectations for not only the board, but for those individuals that utilize the library, and more importantly to me, are the staff that we have working in the libraries. Because when you speak about the American Library Association, that is one of the highest standards for accrediting our librarians with master's degrees from all walks of life, from all different higher levels of education, different colleges, universities. But if we looked at all of the associations in which we find ourselves members of, I can assure you we would find fault with many of the things that may be currently doing. So I wouldn't say that we would divest all ourselves from those associations, because if you look at most of us around the table are Kiwanians. I can assure you not everything Kiwanians do, all of us agree upon, but as the acting county administrator and as the director of community and veteran services in which the libraries fall under, I am looking forward to the opportunity to speaking more to the board, getting direction what the board would like to see, scheduling as many workshops as you like to see so we can really get down to the nitty gritty and outline a policy moving forward so we can be extremely successful for the citizens of Manatee County. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Clegg, would you like to
Yeah, I'll just
provide
add a
some
couple
legal
of
guidance
things
as
because
we
there
go?
is some law on this. It's kind of questionable. There's a 1982 case, U.S. Supreme Court case called Board of Education v. PICO, and it was a divided court that talked about what First Amendment interests are there in the decisions about which books to offer in libraries. And I can tell you from experience, the ACLU cites it with abundance when you do something that they don't like. I've been through that early in my career. But on the other hand, it's questionable where the court would come down on these issues today because the court has changed and a lot has happened since then. But I do think I want to go back to Commissioner Ballard's approach to this because I think it is important that however the board deals with it, we deal with it in a way that is politically neutral. That's really what that's your safe harbor, is to make sure that what you're offering in your libraries covers all points of views, not just one particular point of view. I think that it's a tough issue for a board of elected officials to deal with directly, book by book, but putting together some form of advisory committee to keep an eye on things and to kind of, vet them and weigh in on them is certainly something that is a legally defensible approach. So that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. So the speaking order is Bearden, Satcher, and Baugh. Commissioner Bearden.
So with Commissioner Ballard speaking in regards to our current inventory and there being more abundance in a particular subject opposed to the other, what can we do currently with our inventory that we may have more of to maybe possibly look at cutting that in half or maybe possibly selling those books so that we can level up the inventory that we have that are on both sides?
That's a great question. So what we could do is we could take that subject, particularly economics. I think that that's something that's near and dear. So we would look at the economic thinkers, the great thinkers, and bring in all points of view.
Okay, so, but would we maybe because it's going to cost us more to buy more books, right? Is there a way for us to cut costs by cutting some of the books that we currently have, maybe selling those books to a different library, maybe up in New York or somewhere in California, and then maybe leveling it up where there's 100 books on this side and 100 books on this side?
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Once the books have been circulated for a while, they really don't have a lot of resale value. But we could accommodate that kind of subject review within our current collection development budget.
Okay. Commissioner Thatcher, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So going back, I mean, now we've gotten into some of the specifics. Let's talk about the Palmetto display.
Sure.
What was the approval process for that display? Who approved it?
So we had a discussion, a brief discussion, saying that the branch leadership had been asked if they could put up a poster board display. It was a decade by decade history of a certain civil rights path for a particular group. And it did not take any county funds to produce that poster board session. It was done, but okay, I just want to make sure. It was done by a third party in the community. So then we said, yeah, it's the right month for it. It's civil rights history, so we will. But we did not realize that it was going to be going in that display case. There was probably a better placement for it.
So I will take issue, with the with Mr. Washington. I don't know that this is a case where we need to be more calm. This was early voting, so October or November. Here we are late February, finally addressing the issue. How much more calm can we be than 3 months to take a look at it? I just was going back to my video of that display, and it's so much worse than I even remembered. The very first thing that you see, first of all, the first thing you see is in our display case, a printed thing with you could use your camera, where they have the links with the, QR, thank you. QR codes totally looks like an endorsement from our library for what's in there. Second of all, it's right below my picture. Third of all, of all the major wars that have been fought by the United States of America, the one that is the greatest victory I believe we ever won was the Cold War. Because we didn't have to spend, 10,000, 100,000, 1 million lives to win that war. And the very first part of that display is taking Ronald Reagan, the man who is far and away more responsible than any other human for winning that war, has a picture of him. It is blacked out. His eyes, his pupils are literally colored red. With the next to it, it says AIDS Gate, or something along those lines. And I'm looking at the picture. So I'm not making this up. I didn't even realize how bad it was until I just went back and looked at the video. There's flag after flag after flag of we respect this group and we want this group to be, to have the same rights in the workplace as others. No, it is getting very specific into each thing. Everyone's got their own flag. And then their books, Jay's Gay Agenda. That's the name of the book. It's not me that brought this up. I did not bring this. We get accused of starting a culture war. No, the culture war was brought to us. I didn't write that book. I didn't put it underneath my picture. I didn't put a picture of a political leader there. It's literally Jay's Gay Agenda is the name of it. It's so obvious that this is an agenda that is being pushed, and we have been participating in it. And here's the thing, as soon as it gets brought to people's attention, all of a sudden we need to be calm, and we need to be fair, and we need to be non-political. Just hold back. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Let's have committees, and let's have work sessions, and let's just go real slow and wait. Why wasn't anybody going slow and asking for committees and asking for fairness when the stuff was being pushed? I feel like the only reason we want to, slow down is because it's been found out what people are up to. And so I don't know what, I wouldn't, if we were doing, you mentioned civil rights. So if we put up a civil rights display and we put a picture of Democratic Senator Byrd, who was a member of the KKK, right? And who, he was a senator for a long time. When I was growing up, 80s, 90s, and I'm not sure when he, departed, and him standing right next to Hillary Clinton, and we graded out, and we took their eyeballs and made them red. What would we be accused of at that point? And would it be time for calm? And maybe that is what we should do. Because, in that case, it's something that's true, and it's not being pushed on children. Those books and that organization in that display, those aren't adult books. Those are targeted at children. They're children's books for the most part. And they're at eye level for kids. And that display, I'm going to guess 18 inches deep. But it was, I counted it, it was, I believe it was 18 feet worth. No, it was 12 feet wide times 2. So 24 feet worth of display. And no one thought, you know what, this might not be a good idea. So, so I don't necessarily know that it's the time for calm. I feel like people that were behind that decision should have to make an account for that. And they should have to justify, I had no idea and I never saw it and no one ever told me what was there ahead of time. I would not have approved it if I had realized this, and I won't do it again in the future. And if that's not the discussion, if the discussion is people shouldn't have reported it and they're making a big deal out of nothing and calm down and make a committee, if that's the discussion, then my confidence in the people we have leading and making those decisions is gone. But if the conversation is, this was an absolute mistake, and I am willing to take responsibility for it, and I'm willing to put in procedures that this will never happen again, and here's how I propose to do it, but I'm open to other procedures to make sure this doesn't happen again as well, then that would be a conversation that I'd be fine with and we can move forward with. But I just don't agree that our real problem here is that we need to be more calm. I think maybe we need to take action on something like this and be sure that this type of thing never happens before. That's all I have now, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, I don't have anyone else on the board at this time. Commissioner Ron.
But, excuse me, Ms. Parrott, thank you very much for being here today, and thank you for being at the last BOCC meeting where we had your husband there, and thank you for his service in the Marine Corps. Appreciate it. I got a quick question. Going back to access, Library Bill of Rights. The Library Bill of Rights focuses on removing barriers to access, removes barriers to accessing the internet and electronic resources. Inside the library system, do we have proper procedures put in place to where if someone under the age of 18 were to get onto a computer or whatever, they cannot access certain sites, and which would be something that would be explicit, or are there any parameters or something put on our computers in our library system to where if something were to be accessed, it'd be automatically shut down? And access, to me, means it's open access to everybody. So I'm just, again, concerned about making sure that in our library system that our children are protected, our children aren't being exposed to, something that I might not consider explicit, but some other parent might consider explicit, those type of materials. And are we continuing safeguards to make sure that happens?
Thank you for your question. Yes, there is a filter on the public computers for under 18. And I'm sorry, to the second part of your question about restricting access, could you restate that?
I just want to make sure that in our library system that a kid walks in there, walks into the adult section. There's no, you got one librarian, maybe two librarians working in in the library, and that somehow they can go in. Back in the old days, if you went to Blockbuster and you wanted to get an explicit video, it was in the back room. I don't know how I know that, but some people told me about that. But that's what I make sure what happens with our kids when they're going into our libraries, that they don't have the ability just to walk happenstancely into an area that is strictly reserved for adults. I mean, some people think Catcher in the Rye is explicit. I don't. But I mean, but just to protect our kids from having that ability to get in there, because that's what we're hearing from our constituents is that it's just kind of wide open, and that a child could come into the library, could go into an adult area or the older area for older teens or whatever, and get something that's not, that they should not be reading or was not approved by their parents to be reading, be whatever the book is. That's the question I'm asking. Is that protection? Are those protections in place?
The library is laid out in such a way that the materials that are intended for adults are in one area of the library. And then the juvenile area, and when I say juvenile, I mean board books, picture books, early readers, chapter books, everything that up to about age 12 are in one area. And then we have a teen section. They are in different spaces. Now, we don't have people guarding or, in between there. We really don't have the staffing for that. However, in our conduct policy, we do request that parents accompany their children to the library. So that's my answer.
Okay, but at like 16 or 18, the parents need to
Under
accompany?
12,
Under
they need
12?
to be with an adult.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that is it's part of the state statutes. But we often don't see that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Ballard, and then Commissioner Satcher.
So I actually have a suggestion that could be helpful, at least for some of these kind of early readers or younger books that are potentially have sexuality or LGBTQ topics. Oftentimes at the library, you have these little labels that are right on the outside of the book, and they'll have things like Christmas, Halloween. I find it very, very helpful because at different times of year, I rent different books for my kids. Or even I think you have ones that say like Christian, just to give a parent an idea of what it is that they're renting for their kids or getting into. Maybe for these topics, that little outside sticker label would be helpful for parents. For example, for that one little book that I mentioned, where if you look at the cover, you're going to have no idea what that subject matter is. So that's just one suggestion. Then my other suggestion is for some of those young adult books, I did say that we need to expand the parental consent. What does that look like? I have the thought of a separate consent for young adult books, coming of age books, books involving drugs. Because I will say, again, as a kid who read a lot, even 20 years ago, or when I was reading these books, there were certain books that I read that my parents would not have approved of. They weren't on LGBTQ topics, but there were definitely coming of age stories, stories about drugs, all kinds of things that, had my parents known that I was reading them, they definitely would not have approved. And they're things that I wouldn't approve of my kids reading when they're 12 years old. So I don't know how you can cordon off those books or group them. I know that for staff that would be a kind of a difficult thing to do. But I do think that it would be really helpful, and I do think it would give parents a little bit more confidence in those, especially in those young adult books.
If I can add to respond to that a little bit, we do have a parenting area, and Lynn and I have been exploring expanding that because, again, as parents, we would like to have an opportunity to find the right book at the right time to have that conversation with our children. My children are grown, but for having those conversations, and we do believe in that. Oh, may I add one other thing about so at any point, if a child has their own library card, a parent can access that account to see what they have checked out.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Satcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so I'm getting refreshers. So I was inaccurate, and so I apologize. The display, as I watched the video that I made, was actually 3 levels. So, 36 feet, linear feet, 12 feet times 3. And the top level was above my eye level, and the middle level was at my eye level, and then the bottom level was at a child's, eye level. And the children's books that are in the display, looking closer at which books we're aware, the children's books that were part of the display are at kids' eye level. The Jay's Gay agenda and the something about camp, something about coming out at camp, those were at kids' eye level. So for me personally, I'm one of 7, but for me personally, I just don't want to walk away from this meeting. We're taking county time. We've got the public here. This is on an agenda. I don't want to walk away from this with us all saying, yep, we're going to work on it more, and we'll have more, more committees and stuff. Do we disagree? I think it's important that we're clear. I believe that was, that display was pushing an agenda, obviously pushing that agenda. It brings up political figures as much as possible in there. I just saw where, there's other, politicians that are mentioned in it, and it's definitely telling people what to think as much as it can. Do we have an agreement that was inappropriate and we won't do, we will never deliberately, go down that road again? Or do we have, or is our position here today that, that we should have looked closer and we'll take a little, be a little more calm and careful next time? I mean, I feel like I'm one of 7. I need that question answered today, Mr. Washington. Do you believe that I'm wrong? Or do you believe that the display was inappropriate and wrong? I don't see any middle ground there. To have that display, I'm not saying I'm not asking that people have to agree with me, right? As far as how they feel about what's in the display. They could like it or not, but was that proper use of library resources, display place, and to say we don't endorse, I think that's a little disingenuous. You go to the grocery store and the things they want you to buy are on the end caps. And our end caps in our libraries are, every time I've ever been in, it's never been I don't want to go beyond. I'm not there every single day. Maybe I'm wrong. But the ones I see are generally left-leaning, groups or events that they're promoting on those end caps and in this place in a display case. But that's maybe that's a separate issue. It's not separate. It's related. But as far as this particular one, I feel like if we disagree about this, then we really disagree. Because I don't know how it could be much more overt that it was beyond the scope of the role of a publicly funded library. So I would like to dialogue because I want to walk away from here with an answer on that. Okay. And if no one's ready to say, Mr. Satcher, you've got a point, that was not the right use of our display place and resources, et cetera, then at least we have some clarity moving forward. I think we need to get there, though, because this is, how much more time are we going to give to this issue. So
Yeah, let's go ahead and pose the question then to the administrator, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner Satcher, for the clarification. I'm not going to tell you that you were wrong. I will tell you that, to repeat what was said in October when this all came about, the display itself, knowing all the things that we know about it today, it probably wasn't our best judgment to put it up. So there we do agree. But the more important thing to me, sir, and I want to keep repeating that this board sets the policy. But what's extremely more important to me is that these meetings are televised, and we're saying some things that can be misunderstood as inflammatory when we're talking about our staff. And if there is, again, more conversation needed to be had about what this board would like to see in our library systems, with the suggestions that you've given us today, and we're taking notes, we will do that. But when we speak about my entire comment of calm, it's talking about every single thing that was discussed in this section of the work session, not the display. So again, to reiterate what I said in October, it wasn't the best judgment to put it up. Knowing what we know today, those types of things are vetted by not only the library staff, but myself as an individual county administrator acting, as well as the director of CVS, sir.
All right, thank you, sir. We have one last commissioner on the board, and then we'll go to public comment. Commissioner Baugh.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Washington. That was a good comment. I do have a question. Is it not feasible to have any sexual orientation material of any kind? Yeah, let me put that in, of any kind, in, one spot? Whether it be for children, adults, whatever you want to call it, which I don't agree with that, but whatever. Isn't it possible to have anything that might be questionable in one area so that parents know and we don't allow children in there? Is that not feasible? And if not, why?
In general, they are together. By the Dewey Decimal System, it would be grouped together in the adult area.
Okay. All right, well, and I think, Mr. Washington, you hit it right on the nose. We set the policy. So obviously, we're going to have to meet again and set that policy so that we kind of make it very clear on what we want to see and how we want to see it. But, I think this has been enlightening, and I really do appreciate you being here with us today, so that we can perhaps be on the same page and work better together and give better quality service to our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And I'm glad, I was worried we were going to go all the way through a libraries discussion and no one was going to reference the Dewey Decimal System. So I'm glad that it came up at some point. Commissioner Ballard is sneaking in here at the last minute, so we'll go to her.
I do just want to thank you for being here. I do want to be a friend and a great liaison to the library. I do absolutely believe in freedom of expression, and so I want us to have a productive relationship. So just, I don't want anything that I said today to be misconstrued, but I do think that there's room for improvement. Thank you.
Commissioner Ball would like to make a final statement.
Just one quick statement. I meant to say it earlier, so I apologize, but she just reminded me. I'm older. Don't you say a word, Commissioner Cruz. I'm the oldest on the board. I've seen a lot. I've been around for a long, long time, and I can tell you I have 4 children, and I have 10 grandchildren. So I know that I look at things differently. I'm looking at Commissioner Cruz as I say this. I look at things differently because I've been around longer and I've seen more. So I just appreciate the comments that I've heard here today. Thank you.